They say money doesn't buy happiness, but I learned something far more valuable that autumn evening in Greenwich. It buys respect, and without it, even your own family will feast on your bones while lecturing you about table manners. The notification lit up my phone screen as I navigated my aging Subaru through Connecticut's Gold Coast. Chase Private Client. Monthly family disbursements approved. $215,000 transferred. I allowed myself a small smile, knowing what awaited me at my sister Ashley's engagement party. The irony wasn't lost on me as I drove past hedge fund mansions, my 12-year-old car looking like a servant's vehicle among the Bentleys. Ashley's estate glowed against the darkening October sky. Through the massive windows, I could see the party already in swing, champagne flutes catching light from crystal chandeliers I'd quietly paid for 3 years ago. My family had gathered for Ashley's engagement to Chadwick Hayes, a hedge fund manager who never missed an opportunity to mention his portfolio's performance. I parked behind a pristine Range Rover and checked my reflection. Simple black dress from Target, minimal makeup, hair in a basic ponytail. Everything screamed struggling artist, exactly as they expected. My phone buzzed again. Goldman Sachs Wealth Management. Q3 portfolio review ready. Total assets, $52.4 million. I slipped the phone into my purse and walked toward my personal theater of the absurd. The moment I stepped through the mahogany doors, the familiar symphony of passive aggression began. Ashley swept toward me in a gown that probably cost more than most people's annual salary. "Nadia, you actually made it! I was worried you might be too busy with your… what is it you're doing now? Still those little design projects?" Before I could respond, our cousin Tiffany materialized, her Botox-frozen face attempting concern. "Oh, honey, are you still living in that converted loft in Dumbo? It must be so hard, watching all your friends from college actually succeed." I accepted champagne from a passing server, recognizing him from the catering company whose invoice would arrive in my inbox tomorrow. "I'm managing," I said simply. Chad appeared, his arm around Ashley's waist. "Nadia! Ashley tells me you're doing some kind of freelance work? Logo design or something? That's quaint. If you ever want real career advice, I'd be happy to introduce you to some people. Entry-level positions, of course." The condescension was thick enough to spread on toast. Uncle Rick joined our circle, his newest Rolex gleaming. "There's no shame in admitting when something isn't working out. This artistic phase has gone on long enough. You're 32 now. Time to get a proper job. Look at Ashley. She built her consulting firm from nothing." I almost choked on my champagne. Ashley's consulting firm had been funded entirely by mysterious angel investments she never questioned, operating out of Manhattan office space that cost $30,000 monthly. But she didn't know that. My mother appeared, her disappointment as familiar as her Chanel perfume. "Darling, Mrs. Wellington was asking about you. I had to tell her you're still doing your little computer drawings. It was quite embarrassing. Why can't you be more like your sister?" The evening progressed predictably. Every conversation reminded me of my place in the family hierarchy. Ashley regaled guests with stories of her business acumen, never wondering why every deal turned to gold. Chad pontificated about market volatility, unaware his fund's consistent backing came from a shell company 3 layers removed from my holdings. They were all puppets, dancing on strings they couldn't see, and I was growing tired of the show. As we took seats for dinner beneath a Vanderbilt chandelier I'd bought at auction, Ashley stood, tapping her crystal glass. The room fell silent. "Before we begin," Ashley announced, "I think it's time we addressed something as a family." My phone vibrated. I ignored it. "Nadia," she continued, turning to face me directly, "we need to talk about your situation, your financial dependence. You've been relying on family support for too long. Mom's been helping you, Rick's given you loans you've never repaid, and I've personally covered your expenses more times than I can count." This was fascinating. My mother's help consisted of occasional lunches criticizing my life choices. Rick had never given me a cent, though I'd paid off his gambling debts twice. Ashley's coverage was limited to picking up a coffee tab once 3 years ago. "It's become enabling," Chad added, clearly rehearsed. "Continuing to support someone who refuses to take responsibility is actually harmful." "The truth is," Rick interjected, "you're a burden. We all work hard for what we have, and watching you drift through life expecting handouts, it's unfair." My mother sighed dramatically. "We've all agreed, darling. As of tonight, you're being cut off. No more family support. Time you learn to stand on your own feet, like the rest of us." Ashley smiled, sharp as winter. "I've already spoken to the family attorney about removing you from any trust fund considerations. You'll need to vacate the apartment Mom's been paying for by the end of the month." The apartment my mother supposedly paid for was in a building I'd purchased 5 years ago, but they didn't need to know that yet. My phone buzzed insistently. This time I pulled it out. "Excuse me," I said calmly. "I need to take this." "Of course you do," Ashley scoffed, running away from hard truths, as usual. I looked at the screen. Messages from my financial manager, lawyer, and accountant. The quarterly automatic transfers were pending approval. I stood. "You know what? You're absolutely right," I said, surprising them. "I have been dependent. Not on you specifically, but on maintaining this fiction we've all been living. And it needs to end." I dialed my financial manager, putting her on speaker. "Patricia, it's Nadia. About those automatic transfers we discussed?" Patricia's professional voice filled the dining room. "Good evening, Miss Carter. Yes, the quarterly family support disbursements are ready for approval. Would you like me to review the details?" The silence was absolute. "Please do," I said, watching Ashley's face drain of color. "Certainly. We have automatic monthly transfers totaling $215,000, distributed across 28 individual accounts. This includes mortgage payments for the Greenwich property, Manhattan office lease for Ms. Ashley Carter's business, operational funding for Carter Consulting, vehicle leases for 8 family members, health insurance premiums, and personal allowances. Additionally, the quarterly investment in Mr. Hayes' hedge fund, that's $5 million this quarter. Shall I continue?" Chad's champagne glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the marble floor. "That's sufficient, Patricia. Please hold all pending transfers until further notice." "Understood. I should mention this will affect scheduled payments for several properties, including the Greenwich estate, which has a balloon payment due Monday." Ashley's legs gave out. She collapsed into her chair, staring at me as if I'd grown a second head. This isn't possible. You're a freelance designer. You live in a studio apartment. You drive a Subaru." "I do drive a Subaru," I agreed. "It's reliable. I also own the building my studio apartment is in, along with 47 other properties across 3 states. The freelance design work is real, too. I enjoy it. Keeps me grounded." My phone rang again. "Oh, that'll be David from Goldman Sachs," I answered on speaker. "David, make it quick." My apologies, Miss Carter. #meta, sex 0.05. I'm calling about the board meeting tomorrow. As majority shareholder, your presence is requested for the Manhattan Development Project vote. Also, the Hartford Commercial Complex acquisition went through. Congratulations. That brings your portfolio to just over $50 million. I hung up and surveyed the carnage. Tiffany was crying, mascara streaming. Rick frantically called someone, probably his accountant. Chad stood frozen, no doubt reconsidering his entire relationship with Ashley. My mother sat perfectly still, looking at me as if seeing me for the first time. And Ashley looked broken. "How long?" she whispered. "How long have I been successful?" "Or supporting all of you?" I asked. "Those are different answers." I made my first million at 25, developing apps under a pseudonym. By 28, I'd moved into real estate and venture capital. The family support started 5 years ago, when I realized none of you would respect me for who I was, only for what I could provide. "But why?" My mother's voice was small. "Because I loved you," I said simply. "I wanted you to be happy. I thought if you achieved your dreams, you'd have enough security to see me as something other than the family disappointment. I was wrong." I picked up my purse. Ashley grabbed my arm. "You can't do this," she hissed. "We're family." "Yes, we are," I agreed, removing her hand. "Which is why I'm giving you 72 hours to figure out your actual financial situations. After that, you're on your own." "This is illegal," Chad shouted. "There are contracts." "All contingent on my continued voluntary participation," I responded. "I've been very careful about that." I walked toward the door. Behind me, chaos erupted. Ashley ran after me. "Nadia, please! I'm sorry! We didn't know!" I turned at the door. "That's exactly the point, Ashley. You didn't know, and you didn't care to know. You believed you were special, that you deserved everything that came so easily. Maybe you did deserve it, but you didn't earn it." "We can change," she pleaded. "I hope so," I said sincerely. "Maybe starting from nothing will teach you what I had to learn. That respect isn't inherited or bought. It's earned. And family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about how you treat each other when you think there's nothing to gain." I left them in their shattered palace of illusions and walked into the cool October night. My Subaru started on the first try. As I drove away, my phone exploded with messages. Pleas, threats, apologies. I turned it off and rolled down the windows. The drive back to Brooklyn was peaceful. I thought about my apartment, sparse but comfortable, decorated with my own artwork and pieces from street vendors. Everything chosen because I loved it, not to impress anyone. Tomorrow, charging a fair price they could afford. The owner, Maria, always gave me free cortados and asked about my day with genuine interest. That was real connection, actual respect. The next 3 days passed in legal procedures and financial restructuring. I kept my 72-hour promise, though few used it wisely. Ashley spent the first day in denial, the second in rage, the third in panic. She managed to secure a small business loan, enough to keep her company afloat for maybe 2 months if she drastically downsized. Chad broke off the engagement on day 2, his fund suddenly without its largest investor. Rick declared bankruptcy on day 3, his house of cards collapsing faster than anticipated. Tiffany surprisingly adapted quickest, moved back with her parents, got a marketing job, started rebuilding. My mother sold her house and moved into a modest apartment. She invited me for tea on day 4. I went. Her new place was small but neat, decorated with photos I'd never seen. Us as children, before money poisoned everything. She'd made finger sandwiches like when I was little. "I've been thinking," she said, pouring Earl Grey into mismatched cups, "about what kind of mother raises a daughter who could accumulate such wealth and never use it to feel important, never lord it over people who hurt her, until pushed to the absolute breaking point." "What conclusion did you reach?" "That I failed you in every way that mattered. But somehow, you became extraordinary. Not because of money, that's just money, but because you spent years being humiliated by people you were secretly supporting, and did it with grace. It wasn't strength, Mom. It was hope. Hope that someday you'd all see me for who I was." "I see you now," she said quietly. "Too late, but I see you." We began meeting monthly, these coffee sessions becoming a tentative bridge. Ashley never asked for money, never hinted at needing help. She was building something genuine, slowly and imperfectly. 6 months later, Ashley reached out. "I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for my sister. Can we talk?" We met at a small cafe. She arrived early, wearing jeans and a college sweater, hair in a simple ponytail. No designer bags, no expensive jewelry. Just Ashley, stripped of her armor. "Poverty suits me, apparently," she said with self-deprecating humor. "I've spent 6 weeks figuring out what was real. The answer is, not much. But a few clients stuck around even after funding dried up. They liked my ideas, my approach. It's not much to build on, but it's something." "That's all anyone really has," I pointed out. "Something to build on." We talked for 2 hours, the longest honest conversation we'd had since teenagers. She told me about dismantling her company, keeping only the sustainable core. About learning to budget, to cook, to exist without the safety net she'd never known was there. #meta. Sex. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she said. "I know that has to be earned. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to become someone worth being sisters with." A year after the engagement party that changed everything, I stood in my apartment looking out at the same view but seeing it differently. The city wasn't just lights anymore. It was a network of connections, some visible, some hidden, all part of a complex web of human interaction. My phone rang. Patricia, my financial advisor. "Ms. Carter, interesting development. Carter Consulting, your sister's firm, has applied for a legitimate business loan from one of your banks. They don't know about your ownership. The application is solid, the business plan reasonable. What would you like me to do?" I considered. Process it like any other application. No special treatment, positive or negative. Let it succeed or fail on its own merits. For what it's worth, based on the numbers, it would likely be approved. She's built something sustainable, if modest. After hanging up, I reflected on the past year. The family that once dismissed me had been forced to confront their own capabilities when invisible support vanished. Some had risen to the challenge, others fallen. But all learned something about the difference between given success and earned achievement. I'd learned something too. For years, I'd believed love meant giving without recognition, supporting without acknowledgement. But that wasn't love. It was enabling disguised as kindness. Real love meant allowing people to face their own challenges, discover their own strength, earn their own victories. The puppet master had cut the strings, freeing not just the puppets, but herself. My phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. Got the loan approval today. Legitimate loan, real terms, based on actual merit. Wanted you to know. Not asking for anything, just sharing. Because that's what sisters do, right? I smiled, typing back. That's exactly what sisters do. Congratulations. You earned it. And she had. Finally, genuinely, she had. My phone remained silent. No urgent transfers to approve, no family crises to secretly resolve. Just peaceful silence of a life finally lived on my own terms, surrounded by relationships built on truth rather than transaction. The puppet master had become just another person, and in that transformation, found something far more valuable than control: authenticity. The strings that once connected me to family through invisible support had been replaced by something more fragile, but infinitely more precious. The tentative threads of genuine connection, built slowly, carefully, honestly. As I sketched in my apartment, Maria from the coffee shop brought over a fresh cortado, sitting down to discuss her winter menu vision. As we talked, sketching ideas and laughing over coffee, I realized this was what I'd been searching for all along. Not respect that comes from wealth or power, but simple acknowledgement of one human being by another, seeing each other clearly, and choosing connection anyway. The puppet master was dead. In her place stood Nadia Carter, designer, neighbor, friend, and finally, truthfully, herself.